Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. All persons having anything to do before the Honorable Jeffrey Locke, Chief Justice of the Mass Trial Court, the Honorable Stacey Forts, Chief Justice of the District Court, the Honorable Mark Coven, First Justice of the Quincy District Court, accompanying the 2023 Law Day honoree celebrating his 100th birthday, the Honorable Francis X. Bellotti. Please, draw near, give your attendance, and you shall be heard. God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and this honorable court. You will all be seated.
So thank you all very much. Usually I get a lot of applause when I come up. Never have I had this ovation before. So my name's Mark Coven. I'm the First Justice of the Court. With me on the bench today is Jeff Locke, the Chief Justice of the Trial Court, and Stacey Forts, the Chief Justice of the District Court. On behalf of Clerk Magistrate Arthur Tobin, Chief Probation Officer Kimberly Grunberg, Anthony Holmes, Chief Court Officer that you just saw, I want to welcome you all to our Law Day celebration. As you are all aware, today we celebrate the 100th birthday of Frank Bellotti, and we celebrate him as a lawyer. Frank was a preeminent lawyer in the city of Boston and created the largest public interest law firm in the state when he became Attorney General, a model that's been replicated throughout the country by Attorney Generals who followed him. Before I go on, though, I would be remiss if I didn't recognize one person before I try and recognize all the dignitaries that are here today. But this day would not be possible but for one person who made sure that everything was working properly, that worried every detail, and that wanted today to be the perfect day for Attorney General Bellotti, and that's Clerk Magistrate Arthur Tobin. There are many public officials, past and present, who are here today that I want to recognize, and I'm sorry if I miss anybody. If I miss someone, it's because you did an RSVP, so it's on you and not on me. But I'd ask that you hold your applause. There are a lot of people here today, so please hold your applause till the end. Representing the constitutional officers, Attorney General Andrea Campbell, Secretary of State Bill Galvin, Treasurer Deborah Goldberg, Auditor Diane DeZoglio, Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll, Tara Healy, who's representing Governor Healy, who unfortunately is in Washington, as I understand it, Governor Bill Weld, Congressman Bill Delahunt, Attorney General Jim Shannon, Attorney General Tom Riley, Attorney General Martha Coakley, Tom Kiley, the first assistant under Frank for many years, representing Senator Edward Markey as James Cantwell and Melissa Olson. City officials, we have Mayor Koch, former Mayor Bill Phelan, and representing not from Quincy but from Boston, former Mayor Ray Flynn and his wife, and Angela Menino, the widow of former Mayor Tom Menino. Representing the legislature, we have the Speaker of the House, Ron Mariano, former speakers, Robert DeLeo, Tom Finneran, Charles Flaherty, former Senate President Robert Travellini, and present legislators, Senator John Keenan, Senator Walter Timilty Jr., Representative Tacky Chan, Representative Bruce Ayers, Mark Cusack, Jamie Murphy, Bill Driscoll, and former Representative Stephen Tobin. County officials, we have District Attorney Michael Morrissey, Sheriff Patrick McDermott, the three county commissioners, Joe Shea, the chairman, Peter Collins, Richard Stady, County Manager John Cronin, Register of Deeds William O'Donnell, Register of Probate Colleen Brierly, in outside county official, Suffolk County Register of Probate Steve Murphy. The police chiefs, all of our 7 cities and towns, Paul Keenan from Quincy, Richard Fuller from Weymouth, Mark Dubois from Braintree, Anthony Mirage, Randolph, John King, Milton, William Quigley, Cohasset, William Smith, Holbrook, and a special guest who helps us out every year, and I wanted to specifically recognize him, is retired State Police Detective Lieutenant Ken Halloran, who helps us every year in our law day. Representing the judiciary, we have a number of judges and officials. I want to start with first the Court Administrator, Tom Ambrosino. Judges, we have Dan O'Malley, Scott Peterson, Paula Clifford, Jack Stapleton, Bob Harness, Mary Beth Heffernan, Paul Heffernan, Linda Sable, Roanne Srago, Christine McAvoy, retired Chief Justice Suzanne Delvecchio. We also have Clerk Magistrate Sal Paterna, Clerk Magistrate Robert Juvenville, former Governor's Counsel, Brian Kearney. I neglected in the constitutional officers, I see Governor's Counsel Terry Kennedy here, Assistant Clerk Magistrate Bob Bloom and his daughter Stacy, Attorney Stacy Bloom, and retired Chief Probation Officer Jay Brennan. So if I missed anybody, that's on you. I've done the best that I can. That's all I could say. So if we could have a round of applause for everyone. In general, all the people who are here today represent the respect, admiration, and affection that everyone in this room has for you. We have speakers here today, and my job now is just to introduce the people who will be speaking. So the first speaker is the Mayor of Quincy, the Honorable Tom Koch.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thanks for covering all those electeds, Your Honor. We don't have to do that. Your Honor, Your Honors, Your Honors. Boy, if Mike Bellotti had the mic, boy, he'd have some fun with this crowd, I'll tell you. I'll be very brief. It's an honor and privilege to represent the city of Quincy here today to honor such a great man. Governor Baker called me last night, General, to express his greetings and best wishes and a happy birthday, he said, to a great, great man. I have a proclamation, but before I read that, I have a maquette. We started a tradition. If you've been to the Hancock Adams Common, you see some statues of John Adams and John Hancock and Abigail Adams. And we've decided to start a tradition a couple of years ago, and only a handful of these have been presented, and that is the maquette of John Adams. It seems truly fitting. Frank Bellotti is such a distinguished attorney, as was John Adams. Frank Bellotti has served his country and his state, as did John Adams. He walked the grounds of this area, as did John Adams. So it's a pleasure for me to give Frank Bellotti the maquette of the second President of the United States, John Adams. So with that, to get things off, we'll start with a proclamation. Whereas Francis Frank X. Bellotti was born in Boston, Massachusetts, May 3rd, 1923. Whereas Frank Bellotti is the only child of Mr. and Mrs. Peter Bellotti, Italian immigrants who lived in the Roxbury district of Boston. And whereas Frank joined the United States Navy, serving during World War II with the prestigious Scouts and Raiders, the precursor to the SEALs. And whereas after marrying Margaret Maggie Wang of Wisconsin, in 1948, Mr. Bellotti moved to Quincy to practice law, which he tried his first case in 1953 at the Quincy District Courthouse, which is today named in his honor. Whereas together Frank and Maggie raised a family of 12 children, 25 grandchildren, and 10 great-grandchildren. And whereas a Democrat, Frank was the 61st Lieutenant Governor of Massachusetts and the 39th Attorney General of the Commonwealth. And whereas during his 3-term tenure, he revolutionized the office of the Attorney General, raising its standards to the pinnacle of professionalism, setting a model adopted nationwide. And whereas Frank is a true friend of the city of Quincy and has been a stalwart example to his faith, family, and friends. Now therefore, I, Thomas Koch, hereby extend my sincerest congratulations on the monumental occasion of your 100th birthday and proudly proclaim Tuesday, May 3rd, as Francis X. Bellotti Day. I am so sorry. I think he missed it. The Francis X. Bellotti Day here in the city of Quincy. Congratulations, Francis X. Bellotti.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm now going to ask Chief Justice Locke to stand and make a few remarks on behalf of the judiciary.
I think the emphasis is on few, so I shall be brief. But first, Justice Coven, Chief Justice Forts, my first Chief Justice, Suzanne Del Vecchio, to the many distinguished elected and appointed officials that are here today, both past and present. Thank you for the opportunity to speak at this, the Quincy District Court's annual Law Day. I actually spoke at this event some 25 years ago, so a quarter century later, it is an honor to be able to be before this crowd, so many of whom have made my career and my current position possible. And the debt that I owe to so many in this room is extraordinary. Law Day has been celebrated at the beginning of May in courts across America for the last 75 years. It is a way of reminding us as citizens and as public officials that America is a nation of laws and not of men. As John Adams wrote in the Massachusetts Declaration of Rights, some 245 years ago, every subject of the Commonwealth ought to find a certain remedy by having recourse to the laws for all injuries and wrongs which he may receive in his person, property, or character. He ought to obtain right and justice freely, and without being obliged to purchase it completely and without any denial, promptly and conformably to the laws. That was written some 2.5 centuries ago and has governed the laws in the Commonwealth. That seemed like an awful long time ago until I thought of the longevity of the person we honor today. And measured by that metric, it's 2.5 francs. But we come together today to celebrate the principle that our laws, created by the people through their elected representatives and enforced fairly by impartial judges and magistrates, ensure our freedom, our liberty, and our equality among all our citizens and residents. And it's particularly fitting now that this year's Law Day celebration coincides with the 100th birthday of one of Quincy's most distinguished and likely oldest citizens, who we recognize today for more than half a century of leadership in the development of the Massachusetts law and of our courts. Massachusetts has produced many a fine lawyer and statesman. They include, as we reference, Quincy's own John Adams, Rufus Choate, Daniel Webster, Oliver Wendell Holmes, and many others. To this pantheon of greats, I think generations in the future will add Francis X. Bellotti, for he created the modern Attorney General's office. He established that national model of professionalism. And on a personal note, General Bellotti, I, and on behalf of a generation of Massachusetts judges, thank you for your leadership in the law, your mentoring of hundreds, perhaps thousands, of young and aspiring lawyers, and your support and guidance to a generation of past and present judges. For those who wonder how we get our robes, we talk to each other, and it's often been said, It's good to know the governor. It's great to know Frank. So, on behalf of the Massachusetts Trial Court, I want to wish our general a happy birthday and our best wishes. Thank you.
It's now my pleasure to invite the present newly elected Attorney General, who walks in a long line of great Attorney Generals that are in this courtroom, Andrea Campbell. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
This is a celebration. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I was so inspired by Frank that I got up early this morning to work out. So I feel good. It's great to see so many of you, of course, from Quincy, from the greater Boston area, all of the Commonwealth, as we come together to celebrate an incredible leader and an incredible attorney, an amazing human being on his 100th birthday, our Commonwealth's living legend, former Attorney General Frank Bellotti. A.G. Bellotti, as you know, being AG is indeed the best job in the Commonwealth, and I am really proud to be the latest individual entrusted with the responsibility of leading this office. But I know it was truly your vision, your leadership, and your hard work that transformed the office of the Massachusetts Attorney General, once located in the State House, into the People's Law Firm. This will, of course, be a significant part of his legacy. Given the divisiveness we're seeing in this country and the issues at play, the role of an Attorney General's office has never been more important. And because of you, we actually have the legal authority, the credibility, the expertise to be a great convener, to get things done on topics that may be deemed controversial. We have the tools to actually protect consumers and put money back in their pockets, the authority to keep our residents safe, to fight for common sense gun laws, healthcare justice, and the credibility to take a stand on any issue and be taken seriously. It is about being an advocate, giving a voice to the vulnerable, promoting equal and fair opportunity, and ensuring, most importantly, that the next generation does better than the last. And that is all because of this incredible man, Frank Bellotti. Generations of legal professionals and public servants have benefited from his mentorship, his friendship, and I remain ever so grateful for all he did to support me in becoming the 45th Attorney General of the Commonwealth, and of course, the first Black woman to serve in this role. It is indeed another significant part of his legacy, preparing the next generation of leaders. I'm committed, of course, to building on your work, Frank. I hope you get to enjoy today. I hope you get to have a nice glass of red wine, or more than one. But thank you for your friendship. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for being a great family member and modeling that, a great husband and modeling that too. Happy birthday, enjoy today. And to all who are his family, thank you for your service too. Happy birthday to Frank Bellotti.
As I've indicated, we have a lot of great prior speakers here today. They're all my friends, but I'm going to give you the best speaker of the House, Quincy's own Ron Mariano.
I travel with all those guys. It's the only way I'll get a hand. Thank you. I'd like to recognize all the judges. This is the most judges I've ever seen in one place in my life. I've avoided this place No offense to you, Arthur, I just didn't want to come up. I had Steve anyway, I just called Steve. Hi, Frank. Welcome to the Francis X. Bellotti Courthouse. And then I walked in, I thought I was at a Sons of Italy meeting. Which is kind of nice. But anyway, I want to talk a little bit about probably the easiest piece of legislation I ever passed, and that's naming the courthouse after Francis X. Bellotti. My legislative career is checkered and at best, and I was having an event, and it was a rainy, cold night at the Parker House, and the event was not all that well attended, but in walked my mentor and someone who I've looked up to since I was a kid, and that's Frank Bellotti. And I said to myself, why did he come all the way to Boston for me? And I realized he didn't do it just for me. He did it for everyone he had a relationship with. Everyone who had followed him and paid attention to the good works that he had performed. And I just turned and I said, there's not any real way I can repay him because he was retired. He was dabbling in other things which I didn't understand. But it was probably none of my business in the first place. But it was someone said to me, as I was standing there watching Frank dry off, was that we should do something for him. And I said, yeah, we should. And we did. We named the courthouse after him. And you know what, Frank? It was a unanimous vote. I don't get many unanimous votes now. I'd welcome a unanimous vote on anything. But we get a unanimous vote, and now this will be your courthouse forever. And I'm so happy to have that as part of my legacy. You know, I grew up in Quincy, you know, down the point, Italian, Jewish neighborhood. I never saw a blonde until I got to high school, so I was socially maladjusted. So when it was election day at Point Webster, I would be in the schoolyard as a kid, and in those days you could pass out palm cards going to the polls, and they'd be all over the ground because people would throw them away. And we would pick up yours as the only Italian name that was on the ballot at the time and collect them. And I don't know what we did with them. You know, maybe we shot, like baseball cards, shot them against the wall. But I am so proud to be here today, standing in this building, which will soon, we hope, be improved considerably in your memory, because this truly is where it all began for you and makes me very, very proud to be here honoring you today on your birthday. So congratulations, Frank.
So interestingly, I'm not sure if people recognize this, but we actually have a number of former district attorneys of Norfolk County with us today. Congressman Bill Delahunt, Chief Justice Jeffrey Locke. There's one other. Oh, Congressman Bill Keating is here today.
Mike Morris.
Well, now, you don't beat me to it. I want to introduce the present District Attorney of Norfolk County, Michael Morrison.
I thought the mayor had the ultimate gift for a minute. The marquee is nice, but I thought he was giving him a bottle of cognac. And not that Frank taught me well. A little red wine, a little cognac goes a long way. Those of you that know him. It's really an honor and pleasure to be here. Growing up in Quincy, that people know the Bellotti name. I was 8 years old with O'Malley at that time when Frank was first elected. And my father was a labor leader and said to me that, that guy is the future of the Democratic Party. And it turned out that he was a leader and was the future for a good period of time. I was fortunate enough to grow up with some of the family members. Some of us may have been unfortunate as well. Sorry, Tommy. But so that I was actually a good friend of Peter's. And so the Bilotis had their own precinct, which was awesome. But if you grew up in my time frame, 10 years either side of my age, you knew a Bilotti. And so, I know Frank ran for governor 3 times. I think I could only vote for you twice, but I'm sure I was handing out cards in one of the other ones. But I honestly think your real success in calling was your election as Attorney General in 1974. Although it was a loss for a lot of people who were really ticked off that you couldn't be their attorney anymore, it was a gain for the Commonwealth because you were really the people's lawyer. And most people have recognized what a great job you've done with the office. In fact, even your colleagues elected you president of the National Attorney General's Association. So I had a chance as a young legislator to work with Frank. And most of you know he makes a much better friend than enemy, and he's always been my friend, fortunately. And last night, in fact, he was at a fundraiser, always the first person at a fundraiser. 100 years old, he's at Joe Shea's fundraiser. I'm 10 minutes late, and Frank's already done the room and walking out. So it's unbelievable, the ever-ready bunny, but I was involved in a battle. Frank has always been fiercely loyal and honest and outspoken when necessary. And then Andrea talked about the role of the Attorney General, and there was a political issue in the legislature that really questioned the authority of the Attorney General and the role of the Attorney General. And it really didn't belong in the legislature, and most of us knew that. Some people had to learn the hard way. But Frank, I was on the right side, and Frank was right on the issue, which that always helps too, Frank, but it wouldn't matter with me. So, I was the beneficiary of his help and support over a number of years, and more recently, I want to mention that one of the things that I'm kind of proud of that has gone by that most people forget. I was a young legislator when Kemper Insurance was leaving the city of Quincy. They were down at State Street South. And so they had like 800 employees, and it was a big issue. They were just like leaving. Insurance carriers were folding left and right. And so Frank had been out of office, but Frank had assembled, he had a very group of talented people who worked for him in the Attorney General's office, the practice of law, and they put together a plan to rescue Kemper Insurance and to set up what I now consider one of the most successful insurance companies in the Commonwealth, Arbella Mutual Insurance Company. And it was Frank who did that. I don't know if Bobby White is here. Bobby was the lobbyist for Arbella at the time, and everybody knew Bobby. I know the speakers are laughing. So he came. He said, "Michael, I have a piece of legislation that you're going to sign." And I said, "Okay, what does it do?" Well, he said it will save 800 jobs in your district. And I said, "Okay, Kemper Insurance, what else?" He said, "Well, Frank said you'd sign it." "Well, why don't you say that first?" So I signed the bill with the help of some of the people, the speakers in the room. It actually became law, and it's an honest, it's really one of the best insurance. I have my insurance with you, John. I just want to let you know. So I had an opportunity to go to a conference, a national conference, and Frank hates to travel, but I convinced him to go to San Diego. And we're speaking at a national insurance conference and talking really about the success of Arbella. The Hyatt is right next to the convention center. They're a client to the law office. And I said to someone, "Can you take care of this guy? He's doing me a favor. He's the past president of the National Attorney Generals. Can you, give him a nice room?" I'm on the 5th floor. Frank says, "Michael, you got to come up and see my room." And I said, "Okay, where are you?" So I'm on the top floor. And I said, "But you got to press this code into the elevator." And so I get up there, and the elevator's open. And there's like a room that's bigger than my house and probably equal to the Bilotti house. And so I looked around and said, "Frank, I had nothing to do with this." So Frank fessed up that his good friend was the mayor of La Jolla, who happened to be friendly with the owner of the Hyatt. And so his friend actually was a Navy buddy that the two of them trained right in San Diego. So Frank's, the room, it was so big that when you looked out, Frank said, "Well, look down there, there's 4 aircraft carriers. And look out there, you can see the ocean." And he said, "Come over here a minute, Michael." And we pointed to Coronado Island. He said, "See that Navy base over in those planes? That's where I learned to train with the Navy." And that's when I learned really what a distinguished war record he had. So I also learned a very valuable lesson as well. That Frank said, we go out and get a bite to eat. It was very simple. We need some exercise, a glass of red wine, and I understand they have hand-rolled cigars in the Gaslight District. It was a home run. And then he says to me, "We have to go to the Padres game." I said, this is getting better all the time. He says, Michael, you don't understand. I hate baseball. I said, it's worse than watching paint dry. Nothing happens. But he had to go because the mayor got him the seats. And so I enjoyed the Padres game. So Frank, I'm told, most of you know that when his day, they played squash and racquetball and anything that moved and it was competitive was Frank's type of sport. Michael, and I'm supposed to mention Michael because he told me to. For those of you that got parking spaces, there's 200 spaces, right? 205 spaces here. Michael had 400 passes printed. But so I just Michael reminds me that Frank played golf once in his life. And he thought you were supposed to run after the ball, and the people playing with him said, "No, Frank, this is like a gentleman's game." That Michael said he walked off the course, played golf once, never even finished the game. And so Michael's quoted in today's paper that says, "We're vet Frank Bellotti of Quincy keeps moving as he hits 100." Frank, I hope you keep moving for another few years when we see a new courthouse here in Quincy. Congratulations.
So it's now my pleasure to introduce Tara Healy, who is the sister of Governor Maura Healy. So thank you very much for coming here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Coven and Mr. T. Maura is so sad that she could not be here today, but she sends her love, Frank, and it's just amazing looking around this room. It's just such a testament to you and who you are and the many lives you have impacted. You're just a true inspiration, and we wish you the happiest birthday, and we love you lots.
We're especially grateful to Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll, who I knew rushed here from another event. So we're deeply appreciative, and if you please join us.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here with so many distinguished guests, members of the court, members of the legislature, former members of the legislature. I don't think we've had this illustrious group of individuals all in one room since the inauguration, and most of those folks were legally required to be there. But it's not surprising given just the historic and multi-generational impact of Attorney General Bellotti. I don't know if there's been another person in Massachusetts history with the record of public service that you've been able to put together. By all accounts, this public service has certainly been matched by your personal humanity and kindness that you bring to every effort. It's an honor to be able to recognize your service that you gave to this Commonwealth and certainly the person that you are. And I'd be remiss if I didn't pay tribute to your late beloved wife, Maggie, and her devotion to your career, your children, and her own public service. As Tara mentioned, the governor would love to be here herself. I know she was here for your 95th birthday. That means she'll be here for your 105th birthday. But she is in D.C. today, pitching Massachusetts to the Commerce Department as part of the Select USA conference soliciting foreign investment and doing a great job by all accounts. But I know how much she considers you both a friend and an inspiration, and really wanted to make sure that we could be here as a group effort to both recognize your commitment and friendship to her and your public service to this Commonwealth. And I think many folks haven't mentioned the outstanding work you did as Lieutenant Governor in your career. So I think it's important that we recognize that. And has been mentioned your military service. I'm a Navy brat myself. I know the dedication that military families mean to our country, and can't say enough about the importance and clearly the inspiration you had in fellow service members as well. And on behalf of Governor Healy and myself, and frankly our entire administration, we want to wish you the happiest of birthdays. You're the man of the hour. In fact, you're the man of the century. And I want to present you with this citation. On behalf of the citizens of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I congratulate you on the joyous occasion of your 100th birthday. We commend your valiant service to the United States Navy during the Second World War, your time as Lieutenant Governor of the Commonwealth, and your invaluable 3 terms served as the Massachusetts Attorney General. We thank you for your continued commitment to serving the Commonwealth and wish you many more years of impactful service. 3rd day of May, 2023. This was signed.
So there are 2 additions to our program before we get to the Attorney General himself. First, I want to introduce a very dear friend, a person who spent a lot of time here because he was the District Attorney of Norfolk County, now the Congressman, Congressman Keating.
Well, thank you. I look around the room and I've seen my predecessor, Bill Delahunt, and my successor, Michael Morrissey. I've seen people I've gone to law school with, people from my time in the House, the Senate, DA's office, people that ran against me, and people that I ran against. And it's a pleasure, Frank, they're all here for you. Frank was always a dear friend, and he's a person who knew how to be loyal to his friends, but still be steadfast to the law. And the one thing I recollect was years ago, decades ago, and there's no statute on this, that in the town of Stoughton, there was a place called Cedar Lodge, kind of a rustic place. And it was a Sunday, and there was still blue laws, I think, in effect at that time. And I had a fundraiser that ran from 9 o'clock in the morning until 1 o'clock in the afternoon, blue laws being what they were. Frank was the first one there, as everyone mentioned, and he walked in, looked around, and saw the Portuguese wine flowing in the place that way, and did a 180 turn. He said, "I'll be back at 12 o'clock." I mean, he did both, and he was there. I don't know what he did for those 4 hours, but he made sure he came back. People mentioned all the things that he did. I'm here representing with Steve Lynch, Congress. Steve has put a congressional record with your history as part of the official record of Congress, and I have a flag really dedicated to your service in the Navy and what is now the Navy SEALs, and your dedication to country in that regard. I'd like to give this flag that flew over the Capitol in your honor to you and wish you well. If everyone spoke here today, we'd be here for your 101st birthday. So I just want to be brief, don't give any whereases, but to a friend, a long-standing loyal friend, Frank Bellotti, all the best.
Congressman, thank you so much for coming up from Washington. I know you're due back in Washington later today. So I was out here for before we get to Peter Bellotti. I came out before the event and I was saying hello to the speaker and to the mayor and some other people, and I said hello to Governor Weld. He said, "I want to talk." And I said, "Well, I know I've been around long enough to know that you don't say no to a governor, and you really don't say no to Governor Bill Weld. So, Governor."
Thank you very much, Mr. Chief First Justice. Frank, it's an honor to be here with you. I have a Frank Bellotti story I want to tell. It'll only take 2 minutes. 45 years ago today, on May 3rd of 1978, I announced my candidacy for Attorney General of Massachusetts to run against the incumbent, Francis X. Bellotti. So Frank beat me 80-20 in that race. And on election night, I call him up, as is the custom, to congratulate him. And I say, "Frank, congratulations, you ran a great race, you taught me a lot, thank you so much." And I'm waiting for him to say, "Why don't you drop dead, you little drip?" Or something like that. But he doesn't. He said, "Bill, we need to talk. Why don't you come into the office on Thursday? I'll have Tom Kiley there, my first assistant, and Peter Lucas, my press guy, and we can have a discussion." So I said, "Well, that's better than a sharp stick in the eye." So in I go, and I see him. And I get there, and he says, "Bill, the Republican Party needs you. They're a bunch of turkeys." It wasn't his precise word, but that was the general idea. So stick around, stay involved. So I leave, and I think that's good. And I go back to trying cases in Superior Court, State Superior Court, and some in the U.S. District Court. And then a funny thing happens. Ronald Reagan gets elected, and by a fluke of President of the United States, he needs the United States Attorney in Massachusetts. So I get the job because I've been trying cases. And it so happened that at that time, the state of relations between the federal, state, and local law enforcement folks, I think my friend Bill Delahunt will back me up on this, there was a certain amount of tension in those relations. So Frank and I get together, and we say, we're going to have a law enforcement coordinating committee, federal, state, and local, and I become kind of like the tame U.S. attorney. And Frank gets elected head of the National Attorneys General Association. He takes me around the country. We're kind of riding circuit, showing all the other districts where there's a lot of tension between federal, state, and local law enforcement, that when the people all get together, they can get a lot accomplished. And a lot was achieved by that at the NAG meetings. Frank never took vacations. He would just take the whole family to the NAG meeting. And I was like the extra child. But the state of federal law enforcement relations with the state and local has been very good ever since. But I can tell you one thing, that never would have happened without that first phone call on election night. Thank you so much, Frank.
It's now my pleasure to call up Peter Bellotti, who will be representing the Bellotti family here today.
Good morning to everyone. On behalf of the Bellotti family, I want to thank all of you for being here today. It's really an honor to have so many of you with such history with my father. Also, I want to thank Judge Coven and Arthur Tobin for all they did. It's usually a zillion details for something like this, and there's always something else that comes up, and we're really appreciative for the work that you've done, as well as the courthouse staff. A century is a long time and represents a long life. Dad has enjoyed very good health for decades. Most of you know that he would exercise vigorously 2 or 3 times a day, and that continues today. Unfortunately, he set the bar so high that no one in the family was able to follow suit. Also, he has enjoyed pretty good health for most of his life. Some of you may have noticed that my father's primary care physician, Dr. Fang, is here today, and I want to assure you that he's here as a guest and not, and not to monitor any health issues. How do I know this? Earlier, he approached my father, and he didn't ask for a copay. Our family has been blessed. We've had our mother with us for 98 years until the day after Christmas when she passed away. And we're lucky today to be here with all of you to celebrate my father's 100th birthday. Throughout our lives, we've learned valuable lessons from both of them, and we've watched them and been inspired by them as they live lives of purpose, meaning, and fulfillment. We've always been proud of that, and we continue to learn from that today. Dad, today is quite a milestone in your life. It's a testament to the amazing journey that began May 3rd, 1923. Looking back, Dad's experiences in the Navy during World War II, like many other veterans, shaped his life. There was one early on experience or moment that helped him through his years overseas in the Navy, as well as the hardships over the last 81 years. To be sure, it was an achievement to be selected to the Scouts and Raiders, one of the early special forces of the Navy. But for a 19-year-old kid from Roxbury, from a single home, from a single parent home and an apartment, it was much more than that. He was on his own, but one thing he realized, and it was a realization that would help him the rest of his life, was that going through the grueling training of the Scouts and Raiders, he realized that he could survive being pushed well beyond his mental and physical capabilities, and that was a valuable life lesson that would serve him well for decades to come. After the war, Dad returned home with the energy and optimism that anything was possible. Anxious to move forward with his life, at 23, and with the help of the GI Bill, he was able to attend Tufts, where he completed college. Our parents met in 1948, and the following year they were married. The next year they had their first child. Over the next 5 years, they had 5 more children. So 6 children in 7 years. Like so many things, our dad was fast and efficient. Even now, we marvel at how our parents were able to balance it all. During the law school years, my mother would type his class notes, and he would take care of the young kids, and he would manage going to class, studying, and work a part-time job at night. It's miraculous our parents were able to feed so many of us in those early years. There was very little money coming in. And keep in mind, this was long before ramen noodles became a household staple. In our house, no food was wasted, even if our parents had to take liberties with the truth to get us to eat every crumb. Dad would tell us that the crust was the best part of the bread and convince us that it was a treat. There were other things. He did that with other foods as well that we weren't crazy about, and none of us liked the skins of baked potatoes. So he told the boys that eating the skins of baked potatoes would grow muscle. My father knew the boys were always more gullible than the girls. Growing up, Dad's training in the Navy sometimes seeped into our household. There were 14 of us under one roof. So we thought discipline was critical to maintain order. Our parents loved bunk beds. And for a time, we had 2 sets of bunk beds in 3 of the bedrooms. Because money was tight, that was the closest any of us ever got to an overnight camp experience. To make sure that no one overslept during the school year, Dad would barge into the bedroom sometime around 6 o'clock, each bedroom. He'd turn on the bright overhead light, and in the winter he would open the windows. And then he'd shoot out as fast as he came in without saying a word. On more than one occasion, our mother had to remind him that he wasn't running a boot camp for Navy recruits. After completing law school and passing the bar in 1952, Dad began to build a law practice while continuing his part-time job. In 1953, although I think it was 55, he tried his first case. It was a criminal case in the Quincy District Court, the old Quincy District Court on Coddington Street. He insists that he won that first trial, but Clerk Magistrate Tobin is still looking for the court docket to confirm that. So for now, the jury's still out. Over the next few years, he tried more cases, but his practice wasn't growing with the same speed that he had hoped. And so he needed to increase his name recognition. At the time, Norfolk County was a heavily Republican county, and there was no Democrat that was running, so he decided to run, only to increase his name recognition, he told us years later. As expected, he lost, but was struck with the political bug, or as my mother would say, the political virus. She waited in vain for years. She waited in vain for the vaccine, which never came. As we know, over the next 2 over the next 2 decades plus, there were more campaigns, more years in office, and many accomplishments. And now at 100, it might be a good time for him to begin to think about retirement. In closing, Dad, your family would like to say how much we appreciate everything you've done for us and how much we love you. Happy birthday.
So Michael Bellotti always told me he was the funny one in the family. So it's now what we've all been waiting for, to hear from the remarks from the man himself, Attorney General, Lieutenant Governor, attorney, philanthropist, political activist, Francis X. Bellotti.
You know, there isn't a great deal more for me to say. I should remember what Judge Mulhall said. The mayor didn't mention what happened in that first trial. I won, I kept talking, and Judge Mulhall looked down at me and he said, "You've won, now shut up and sit down before you lose it." So, I remember Judge Mulhall because I tried cases before him and I never won until I did one for one of his friends. And then the other judge before whom I tried cases at that time was Judge O'Halloran. She was such a nice lady that she made you think you won, even when you lost. So, I wish that I were articulate enough to let you know how much this day means to me. How many people in this world are able to start and come back 72 years later to where you started and be welcomed by your friends, old and new? It's hard to explain how much that means to me. And I guess the political business is one of those places where you have friends like Ronnie Mariano, who had this courthouse named after me. We all know it's Arthur Tobin's courthouse.
I had to get his permission.
He's our Quincy legend. But I'm very proud to have my name mentioned in this courthouse. Even though Arthur Tobin and our giant Chief Justice, who made me feel so welcome to be in this room. I don't know how to really explain how I feel. It's difficult. You know, I look around this room and I see so many friends. And I guess in no other business can you have that many friends. We forget the ones that don't like me. They're not really important. But, you know, it's difficult for me to try and put into words how much it means to me that you're all here and that you've made me feel that it's a wonderful world. The only problem is my wife's not here. She was there for 72 years. And I really miss her. So I'm not going to drag it out, and I'm going to listen to Judge Mulhall. And I'm going to say to all of you, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for everything.
So I just want to take a minute more. There are a number of people I want to thank. I've already thanked Mr. Tobin, as many people have, but there are a number of people who made this day possible. I just want to take a quick minute of your time to thank them. First, Mayor Koch and the city officials who are here today, who helped prepare the day and have always been a partner with the Quincy District Court in everything that we've tried to do here. The county commissioners, particularly the chair, Joe Shea, but I want to thank John McGowan and his crew. We don't mention, we're a feat group, we don't mention the custodians, Rob and Eddie Ryan, who put this place together. But we're very, for the three commissioners, we appreciate everything the county has done for us today. Paul Keenan and the Quincy Police, for keeping us safe and secure today. Mark Crosby and Quincy Cable, he's covered the Law Day ceremonies here since the early 2000s. My staff, the people who put this together, Trish McGill, Rosanna Galvin, and Joan Dunn, who works with Mr. Tobin. And finally, and I know this is all going to surprise you, I want to thank Mike Bellotti. So I'm going to, as the final, or one of the final things today, I'm going to call up the members of the Bellotti family. We have a small cake here that George Montilio brought over himself. So they're all rising up. Patty, you decide who's coming up. Patty, you're in charge. Michael, start.
Oh, ready? Pete. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Frank. Happy birthday to you.
That completes our Law Day ceremony.
Court, all rise, please.